A long time ago, in a galaxy far, far too dramatic to tell the truth, one Sith made a rule, and then broke it. Immediately. Darth Bane, the bald icon, the one who supposedly saved the Sith by killing them. All of them. He gave us the rule of two. There can be only two, he said. A master and an apprentice. Cool, clean, controlled. Yeah, no, that was a lie. Bane didn't believe in balance. He believed in backstabbing. The rule of two? It wasn't a code, it was a con. See, Bane had trust issues. Big ones. And not just because his last Sith meetup turned into a force power murder fest. He didn't want a partner. He wanted plausible deniability. So, he started training apprentices. Not one, not two, dozens. In secret. Each one got the same speech. You alone are my heir. You alone will inherit the Sith legacy. And they bought it. Hook, saber, and force lightning. They trained. They schemed. They whispered his teachings like gospel. They all believed that they were the chosen one. Sound familiar? They weren't heirs. They were insurance. Bane didn't plan for succession. He planned for survival. He knew Sith kill each other like it's a sport. So he built a redundancy system. A pyramid of paranoia. And when he died, if he died, because who even knows with a Sith, the lie lived on. Each apprentice, thinking that they were the apprentice, took on their own, passed on the lie, spread it like a virus in a temple full of emotionally unstable teenagers with laser swords. The rule of two became a tradition. The tradition became sacred. And nobody stopped to ask, wait, why did this bullshit start? Centuries passed, and beneath the Jedi Temple, in the shadow of the Senate, in every corner of the galaxy, they were there, waiting, scheming, breeding mistrust like midichlorians on meth. The Sith didn't vanish. They multiplied, quietly, patiently, each one thinking that they were the rightful heir. But here's the kicker. None of them were, because the legacy they were promised never existed. It was a trap, and they walked right into it. And now the galaxy burns on a foundation of Sith lies. All because one bald bastard decided trust, that was for Jedi. The rule of two was a lie, but the Sith, they bought it anyway. They believed, and in believing, they evolved. Not into a brotherhood, not into an empire, but into a network. Disconnected, chaotic, deadly. A Sith alone is dangerous, but a Sith who thinks they're alone? That's apocalyptic. Across the stars they rose, one as a senator, another as a merchant lord, a third as a war criminal with better branding. No robes, no red blades, not at first. They wore suits, they signed treaties, they lobbied. They killed from behind desks, and each one thought the same thing. I am the only one. I am the true heir. I am the shadow of Bane. But they weren't heirs. They were echoes, each one acting alone, each one planting seeds of war, of corruption, of collapse. And in the middle of the Sith masquerade, Darth Sidious, Palpatine, Senator, Chancellor, Emperor. He sat at the center of the web, thinking that he was the web. But even Sidious was a victim of the lie. He thought the rule of two made him special, chosen, heir to a legacy. He didn't inherit a legacy. He inherited a superstition, a virus disguised as doctrine. By the time he looked up, the galaxy was already infected. The Sith weren't hiding. They weren't extinct. They were everywhere. Bankers funding clone armies, generals rigging civil wars, judges twisting laws like sabers through the gut. Each one believing that they were the master. Each one ready to kill the moment someone else said the word apprentice. There was no order, only ambition in 1,000 masks. The fire had spread, not as a blaze, but as embers, scattered, invisible, waiting for the wind. And when that wind came, when the war started, the galaxy didn't fall to one Sith. It fell to all of them. While the galaxy burned, while the Senate rotted, while the Sith whispered from every shadow, Padme Amidala smiled. She wasn't a warrior. She didn't carry a saber. She didn't throw lightning. She didn't have to. Because Padme Nabari of Naboo wasn't just a senator. She was a Sith. Not loud, not dramatic, not red blades and capes. No, she was subtle, elegant, deadly in heels. Her power wasn't destruction, it was seduction. She didn't need to dominate a chamber. She whispered in corners, listened more than she spoke, smiled when others shouted, and let her opponents destroy themselves. She watched Palpatine rise and let him, because power gathered in one place is easier to steal. But her real target? It wasn't the Senate. It wasn't the war. It wasn't the Republic. It was Anakin Skywalker, the chosen one, the powder keg in Jedi robes. She saw him for what he was. Not balance, not peace, but raw, molten power, barely restrained by prophecy and hormones. Palpatine tried to mold him. Padme? She fed him. She played the long game. Not lies, just truths, in the right order. They don't trust you, Annie. The Council fears you. You deserve more. We could make things better. Together. And it worked. While Palpatine offered him destiny, Padme offered him something more seductive. Control. Not balance. Not patience. Power with purpose. A galaxy where peace was enforced. Justice wasn't debated. It was delivered. She didn't want to overthrow the Republic. She wanted to redesign it from the inside. Anakin Anakin never stood a chance. He thought he loved her, but she loved the dark. And in that love, she shaped him. Not with commands, with choice. She let him believe it was his idea. Every moment they spent together, he bent a little further, fell a little deeper, clung a little tighter. And Padme? She watched. She smiled. She waited. Because she didn't need to kill the Jedi. She only needed to own their greatest weapon. It all led here. The Chancellor's office. The beating heart of the Republic. The lair of Darth Sidious. The Jedi thought they were ready. Mace Windu, saber drawn. Kit Fisto, optimism intact. 3 other dudes no one remembers. This was supposed to be it. The final confrontation. The righteous reckoning. They didn't know they were walking into a Sith flash mob. Sidious rose, robes flaring, face melting like a haunted candle. Classic. Expected. But then, the doors opened again, and another Sith walked in. Then another. And another. Senators, generals, advisors. Some wore armor. Some wore silk. All wore secrets. Each one thinking, this is my moment. I kill Sidious. I take the throne. Because the rule of 2? That was ancient history. Now it was the rule of who gets there first. The Jedi blinked. They came for one Dark Lord. They found 12. And none of the Sith were on the same page. They weren't allies. They weren't even frenemies. They were threats to each other. Chaos detonated. Screams, blades, betrayals. One Sith impaled another before anyone moved. 2 more force-pushed each other out the window. One guy tried to monologue. He got force-choked by 3 different people, simultaneously. And the Jedi? They were just trying not to die. Block, dodge, retreat. This wasn't a duel, it was a collapse. And then, she arrived. Padme. No guards, no fear, just power. She didn't ignite a saber, she didn't need to. With a gesture, half the room hit the wall. Sidious staggered. The Sith froze, because they felt it. Something older, stronger, colder. Padme Amidala, Queen of Naboo, Senator of the Mid-Rim, Dark Lady of the Unknown. She wasn't there to join the fight. She was there to end it. Sidious snarled. Traitor, he hissed. She smiled. Amateur, she whispered. And then she broke him. Not with rage, not with lightning, with gravity. She bent the force around him like a cage, crushed his illusions, shattered his spine, and dropped him like a broken marionette. No lightsaber needed, just will. The surviving Sith fled. The Jedi crawled away, bleeding and confused. Padme stood in the center of the storm, untouched, unbothered, unchallenged, because the Jedi didn't win. The Sith didn't win. She won. And the galaxy? It wasn't free, it was hers. Sidious was captured. No grand duel, no final monologue, just a broken man wrapped in robes and ego, dragged out of the Chancellor's office like yesterday's trash. The Jedi expected the hardest part was over. They were wrong. They thought this was the end of darkness. What they got was paperwork. You see, the law didn't care about the Force. It didn't recognize the Sith Code as a crime. It wasn't illegal to believe in conquest, or to meditate on death, or to keep a collection of creepy holocrons under your bed. Believing in the Sith wasn't treason. It was protected. Religious freedom. Republic statute, ratified and ironclad, which meant Darth Sidious, Chancellor Palpatine, could not be charged. He hadn't issued the order to exterminate the Jedi. He hadn't raised an army of darkness. He hadn't even been seen with a red lightsaber in public. And the Senate? They weren't shocked. They were annoyed. Some were Sith themselves. Others were simply complicit. Too many deals. Too many favors. Too many people who owed him everything and didn't want to give it back. Suddenly, the Jedi weren't guardians of peace. They were accusers, political liabilities. And so the Senate made a decision. They wouldn't imprison Palpatine, they wouldn't exile him, they wouldn't even formally censure him. They made him a guest. He was placed under observation, protected, given quarters, given privacy. He was not a prisoner. He was a former head of state recovering from a violent episode. Mace Windu nearly broke his saber in half. Yoda started speaking entirely. Obi-Wan started drinking, because the truth hit hard. The Sith didn't lose. They just got outbid. And Palpatine? He realized something worse than defeat. He hadn't lost to the Jedi. He'd lost to other Sith. People just like him. Greedy, cunning, ambitious, only better at it. They didn't want a master. They wanted his seat. He wasn't overthrown. He was replaced. The Senate chamber had seen arguments. It had seen votes. It had even seen a Sith Lord orchestrate a galactic war from the center podium. But it had never seen this. Dozens of senators screaming at once. Old allies accusing each other of betrayal. Former enemies embracing, then stabbing, then embracing again. The emergency session had been called to restore order. It did the opposite. Secret alliances collapsed in real time. Code phrases were shouted across the rotunda like weapons. Holocrons were hurled. Force lightning sparked under desks. Senators who had spent decades pretending to be loyal now revealed their true colors, which, in most cases, turned out to be deep red and extremely flammable. One senator stood and screamed that she'd been promised the Outer Rim. Another demanded to know who leaked his invasion plans to a rival cult on Korriban. Some tried to pass emergency legislation. Others tried to pass blame. One guy tried to pass himself off as a Jedi just to avoid being force-choked. And in the middle of this mess, Padme Amidala stood. Calm, centered, unimpressed. She let them yell. She let them accuse. She let them burn their masks in front of each other. And then, when the volume reached the peak, she raised one hand, and the room went still. "Let's make this easy," she said. "Raise your hand if you're not a Sith." Silence. Not guilt, just calculation. And then, a single hand went up. Slowly, hesitantly. From the Naboo delegation. It was Jar Jar Binks. Eyes wide, ears twitching, totally lost. But honest. "Hey, Misa not Sith?" he offered with a shrug and a nervous smile. And no one laughed, because at that moment, he might have been the only one telling the truth. The Republic had fallen, not with a bang, not with a vote, but with a room full of monsters pointing at each other and realizing, too late, there were no good guys left. Enjoyed this wild twist on reality? What happens next? Should this story continue? Or do you have another crazy what-if scenario in mind? Comment below with your ideas, smash that like button if you want more, and subscribe and turn on notifications while you're at it so you never miss a new reality shift. This has been Canon Chaos, where anything can happen. We'll see you in the next timeline.